Andrew Barnes, who is in Auckland. He's the global architect of 4-Day Week, a non-profit community that advocates for a shorter working week. Andrew, thank you for your time. Just explain how a 4-day week can be more productive than a 5-day week.
Well, essentially, what you find is most people aren't that productive when they're in the office. So when you offer in exchange for a day off a week, you get higher levels of productivity each day. And what we're finding, Microsoft is not a standout. We're finding most companies that adopt a 4-day week are seeing between 30 and 40% increase in productivity. And profitability, obviously, follows from that.
Earlier this week, we looked at some scientific studies which are becoming more and more prevalent that showed that if teenagers start their school days half an hour or an hour later, their grades improve significantly. And yet we know that schools still start around 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning because that's tradition. So why aren't companies looking at what Microsoft has done and these other companies that are doing the same thing with 4-day weeks and saying, hey, it works, we should do the same?
Well, I think this is, you use the word tradition, and I think that's right. What you've got is a whole generation of business leaders who say we've always done it this way, we've always had a 9 to 5, and therefore they stick to that, despite the fact that the evidence across the world, our own trial at Perpetual Guardian here in Auckland, we're now permanently a 4-day week company, and hundreds of other companies around the world are achieving great results. And, you know, companies are still looking at this and saying, well, how can this be so?
Do you think it's only a matter of time, considering that, at least certainly in big cities around the world, they're becoming 24-hour cities, and so many people are working at night time with technology, people are working remotely as well. So many things are changing in our traditional patterns of working. That will 4-day weeks become something that becomes normal, do you think?
Yes, I do. I think that what we will see is people will say to their employer, look, I want to work these hours. I still want the protections that I get as being an employee, but I'll work these hours and somebody else will work different hours. And so what we will see is companies probably operating on a 7-day basis eventually, but yet people themselves will only be working 4 days rather than 5.
You're a successful businessman, Andrew. Honestly, when you were building up your business, if you had been told you could only work 4 days a week on it, would you have the success you have now?
Absolutely. Working longer doesn't equate to working smarter. What I found with our 4-day week is our leaders and myself, I have more time to think, more time to be creative. And in a world that's moving very quickly, frankly, you need to have thinking time and creativity. And you need staff that are refreshed and healthy. We have across the developed world about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 of our staff with a stress or mental health issue. How can you be productive if you're doing that?
What advice would you give, let's say, a traditional company that still has a 5-day working week? What advice would you give a company that has that traditional way of working in terms of how it can get the best out of its employees? What are the things that companies need to look at most carefully in terms of getting the best out of the people that work for it?
One of the big pieces of advice we give companies is we say, look, just have a trial. Ask your staff how they would do things differently if they had a 4-day week. And then broadly, as leaders, get out of the way and let them come up with the ideas and then run the trial. You will probably surprise yourself as to what sort of productivity and improvement in profitability you get.
What do you think companies are missing out on in terms of the welfare of the responsibility they have towards the welfare of their employees? What are they not doing enough of? I'd like to give you an example. A company that I worked for a few years ago built a huge new building to house the corporation. They went to, I believe, Yahoo and Google and looked at how these companies had built their new buildings. And those companies have places where employees could sleep because it's believed that even a 20-minute power nap can increase productivity. But the company that I worked for, it didn't bother. There was literally nowhere to sleep in a company that was a 24-hour operation. And I thought they could have taken care of us a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people perform well if you give them, say, 53 minutes of work and then 17 minutes of break. Statistically, that seems to be the optimum pattern. Now, one of the challenges is many companies, like the big tech companies, give things like places to sleep, places to eat. But the danger is people never leave the office. And that's one of the big challenges for those sort of companies. I think what we have to do here is actually rebalance how the working week operates. And that's why I believe a 4-day week offers a better solution. And that means that people have a chance to work for a couple of days, take a day off, work for another couple of days. And your productivity will be much better as a consequence.
Andrew, really appreciate your spending time with us on TRT World. We know you're on the other side of the planet. Andrew Barnes speaking to us from Auckland.